I love my wife, Lily, dearly. She has always been my best friend. I was devoid of love and affection for most of my life until she came along 8 years ago. I've been hopelessly in love ever since. We have been married for 5 years now. You know you love someone when you're ready to do anything for them. I do anything for Lily. If she said that the sky was red, it was red. If it wasn't, I'd paint it red. We had a beautiful daughter on 28th March 3 years ago. We named her Dorothy after Lily's grandmother. That is when things started to get strange. One morning, my beloved Lily woke up and said, "I need to tell you something. I cannot keep it in any longer. I don't expect you to understand, but you're the only person I can trust." At first, I thought she was just joking, but she was sweating profusely, and her eyes told me that this wasn't some silly prank. "Yes, darling, what's wrong?" I asked. I get visions, and I can see into the future," she said, her lips trembling with each word. "Wait, so, like a psychic?" I asked. "I don't know. I have always kept it to myself, but it seems I have had this gift since my pregnancy. I didn't tell anyone." "But darling, you're an atheist who prides herself on trusting logic and facts over anything else. I thought we both were like that. Do you really believe you can see the future?" "You don't have to believe me yet. I didn't believe myself either. I just know I have this gift now. I have visions when I look at certain people and places, and they come true. They always come true. I tried keeping this to myself, but after what I saw today, I had to tell you. Your mother is going to die tomorrow." "What? What are you saying?" "Yes, just go over there now. Don't ask any questions." My mother lived with her sisters upstate. It was a 4-hour drive away. I really hope Lily was wrong, but I didn't want to take the risk. I went out. To this day, I cannot explain what happened next, but it certainly made me believe that my wife was psychic. When I was an hour away from her place, I received a call from my mother's sister telling me that my mother had slipped and fallen in the bathroom. She had instantly died from the concussion. Lily was right. This was not a coincidence. Over the next few weeks, Lily got visions of minor things, like what I would see at work, who would visit us during the weekend, what Christmas present I had bought and hidden away from her, and she was right every time. We learned to live with it slowly, unless the visions were tragic, like someone close getting fired or dying. I hadn't believed in these things throughout my life, but it was hard being a non-believer when you were seeing them happen with your own eyes in your own life. I asked her why she hadn't told me about her gift earlier, but she said she had no idea about it. It was only when she was pregnant that she started getting these visions. I still love Lily, and I always would. That would never change. If she said the sky was red, it was red. If it wasn't, I'd paint it red. Things were alright for a while, and I'd like to believe that this was the time in our lives when we were truly happy. I loved Lily and my little beautiful daughter, Dorothy. Lily loved Dorothy and spent most of her time playing with her. They were both so adorable that it filled my heart with happiness every single day. We were happy, in love, and raising a beautiful child. Her having a psychic gift was just a bonus at that point. However, not all love stories have a happy ending. Ours, unfortunately, was an exception. Last year, Dorothy died because of a heart condition that couldn't be remedied. Lily was devastated, and so was I. It was the toughest and saddest time of our lives, and I knew I had to be strong for her. I was her only shoulder to cry on, but most of the time, I broke down alone in rooms of silence when I was sure she wasn't nearby. I couldn't ever get over that, and I knew Lily couldn't either. She spent her nights crying and clutching at me. She spent her mornings waking up and crying. On most days, I tried to calm her down, but on the few days when my heart couldn't handle the unbearable pain of our loss, we held each other and cried. Our perfect life was over. Weeks passed like this. Lily ate less and stopped going out of the house altogether. I couldn't bear to see her sadness, but there was nothing I could do. I was sure that something inside Lily had broken, and she hadn't been the same person since. She didn't speak during the day. At night she cried. She looked at Dorothy's crib and broke down crying every time she saw it. I tried my best to be there for her. I still loved her more than anything else, and seeing her in such misery reminded me of the blissful times in our lives that we had both taken for granted. It also seemed that her gift of having visions went away with Dorothy's passing. She used to stare at walls and ceilings hoping for visions, and whenever she got one, or claimed to get one, she told me about it and it didn't come true. Her gift had gone, and she had become a soulless, depressed version of the woman I had once known. Perhaps Dorothy had something to do with it, since Lily started getting visions when Dorothy came into this world and lost them with her passing. I'm sure Lily realized this as well, but she wasn't ready to accept it. A few weeks later, she told me that she saw, in a vision, that our neighbor's dog had died. Like all her visions since Dorothy had died, I thought this one would not come true either. However, things were different the next morning. For the first time in a long time, I saw Lily smile. "The neighbor's dog, it died," she said. "My gift is back. Do you understand what that means?" No, Lily," I said, still trying to process everything. "It means I can see the future again," she said, and hugged me. I held her tightly. For the first time since Dorothy passed away, she wasn't crying as soon as she woke up. She was happy. "You don't believe me, do you?" she asked. "I do," I said, and kissed her. She kissed me back with eyes wide open, and I realized then that something was still wrong with her. However, I still loved her, and I always would. Losing your own daughter and recovering from the shock isn't going to be pleasant, but I sincerely hope she hadn't gone crazy. The next few days went by normally. Lily was less upset. Getting her gift back seemed to bring a new ray of hope into her life. She told me that in one of her visions, she saw her abusive brother would die within a week. Her brother was an abusive leech to both her parents, and it was obvious that Lily wanted him dead. "Are you sure this is a vision and not just your fantasy?" I said, expecting her to laugh at the joke. "No, he'll die," she said in a flat voice. Her brother did die, and the police are still investigating his murder. Someone had apparently stabbed him in the throat and left him to die in his car. When the police came over to our place for questioning, Lily gave me a look I'll never forget. While the police weren't looking, she looked at me and smiled from ear to ear. She never liked her brother, but even after hearing the news about his death, she wasn't affected. The police left, but they're still investigating. I just hope to God they don't come knocking again. I think Lily is getting happier though. She talks to me more frequently and doesn't cry anymore. Last week, Lily told me that she saw Mr. Hudson, badmouth Billy, as he was known in the neighborhood, would die. Sure enough, he died the next day with a knife stuck in his spine. I saw Lily happy again when she heard. Never did I expect the love of my life to be happy hearing about people dying. It seemed that now she was expecting this, and this was the only thing that mattered to her. The fact that these people she knew, who lived barely a block away, were brutally murdered didn't seem to bother her. It was as if she already knew they were dead as soon as she told me of her vision. It might seem weird that most of my wife's prediction about people dying were fulfilled by their being murdered. It's also a strange coincidence that these people were people she disliked. So, I know what you're probably thinking. It's her. She's killing these people to fulfill her visions because after Dorothy's death, she has gone crazy. But I've always loved my wife. I know that whatever Lily is, she's not a killer and she isn't capable of doing this. I know she's not a killer. I know she's not. Because I am. Poisoning a dog and stabbing two men in the dark were easy, and I'd do it all over again for her. I'll keep fulfilling all her visions if that's what it takes to see a smile on her beautiful face. Like I said, I'd do anything for her. If she said that you were going to die, you would die. I'll make sure you do. If she said the sky was red, it was red. If it wasn't, I'll paint it red. With your blood.
Growing up, I always feared monsters. Even in college, which most would consider to be the time when you can be called an adult, my greatest fears were the monsters under my bed, in the closet, or at the window. I would always tell myself how silly this was, seeing as I was an adult at this point and still afraid of something I knew didn't exist. That was until I met my wife. But before I tell you what happened, let me elaborate on how I met my wife to be and how much she means to me. I met Natalie in college. I was a nerdy guy, yet she saw in me something that no other girl ever had. She was an extremely kind person, always had the sweetest of intentions. As I spent more time with her, I realized how many things we had in common. To me, she was the most beautiful girl in the world. I could stare into her green eyes for the rest of my life, and that's what I chose to do when I proposed and we finally got married. Fast forward to married life, I'm working now, while she's pursuing an online master's degree. Life is good. Life is actually perfect. Too perfect. Ever since we got married, I've told her everything, my deepest secrets, my deepest feelings, and most importantly, my deepest fears. I remember when I first told her about my silly fear of monsters. At first, she laughed it off, but over time, she noticed how I would sometimes shiver in bed, lying awake in fear. Being the sweetheart that she is, she would hold me and tell me it would be alright. My wife became my protector, the one who kept my fears in check. Her face became that of an angel to me, one that would protect me from whatever scary things life had in store. I came to trust those beautiful green eyes, and every time I saw her, I knew I was safe. Now, to the more weird things that have been happening lately. The first incident I can recall that could be defined as strange happened at 3 a.m. one night. I woke up feeling extremely thirsty, and being the fearful guy that I am, grabbed the flashlight to go get some water. As soon as I turned it on, I noticed my wife wasn't in bed. I looked over at the bathroom. The light was on, and I could hear water running, so I assumed she was there. Half asleep, I walked downstairs to the kitchen and almost had a heart attack when I saw my wife standing in the corner drinking water. As soon as I saw her, though, I felt safe. She smiled at me as she sipped from the glass. I was too tired and mumbled something about how hot it was as I got some water myself. She continued to smile as I finished my drink and headed upstairs. As I walked back up, I called out that she should come back to bed since it was so late. When I got back to the bedroom, there she was, sound asleep. That was the moment I became fully awake. I could have sworn she was downstairs. Afraid to go back down, I woke her and told her what happened. Half asleep, half upset, she comforted me and told me to go back to bed. The next morning, she joked about how I'm so afraid of the dark that I see her everywhere as my protector. Besides, I was using the bathroom when you thought I was out of bed. How could I think otherwise? A week later, another strange incident. This one happened in broad daylight, on a Saturday morning. Natalie woke me up at 11 o'clock a.m. and told me she was going to get groceries. Around 11:30, I finally got out of bed and dressed up for late brunch with my beautiful wife. I went to the kitchen and found her drinking a glass of water. I smiled and said, "Back so soon, honey?" She didn't reply, just smiled as she sipped her water. Before I could approach her, the doorbell rang, and I went to see who it was. I opened the door. Yes, it was my wife, back with all the groceries. "Oh, help me with all of this, will you?" she joked, setting the paper bags by the door. As soon as she saw my color-drained face, she knew something was wrong. She sat me down, got me some water, and I told her what had happened. This time it was in broad daylight, and I knew what I saw. As much as I adored her beautiful green eyes, for the first time, I saw in them a strange fear. My wife was the strong one, never afraid. She told me there was something she should have told me a long time ago. She said this had happened to her as a kid. A lot. Her parents and siblings would see her in places they knew she wasn't. They could never explain these occurrences, but since they caused no harm, they learned to live with them without questioning too deeply. It took me a few months to process everything she told me, but eventually, I started to live with it too. Like I said, my true perception of fear was monsters, not my beautiful wife. Several similar incidents happened. For instance, I would see her sitting in bed, only to find her cooking in the kitchen downstairs. In all of these instances, when I interacted with this entity that looked like my wife, she would only smile, never say a word. I actually came to find comfort in seeing her, always smiling, always happy, always perfect. It's important to note, however, that there was never any overlap. I never saw her in two places simultaneously. I guess any sane person would have called out to their wife when they thought they were seeing the entity, but like I said, I found comfort in her green eyes and smiling face. Honestly, I don't really care. Then today, everything changed. My wife told me she was going to visit her grandparents, who live an hour away. She invited me to go, but since it was Sunday and I just wanted to be lazy, I told her to go ahead without me. That's when it finally happened. The overlap. I was in the living room watching TV when I got up to grab a Coke. There she was, my wife again, sipping water from a glass and smiling. I was so used to it by now that I smiled and said, "It's nice to see you're still watching over me." She smiled and continued to look at me with those beautiful green eyes I'd grown so fond of. That's when the phone rang. I turned away from the entity to pick it up. "Hey, sweetie, I'm going to run a little late. Granny insists I stay for lunch." It was my wife. As soon as I heard her voice, I heard a glass shatter, which my wife on the phone also heard. I turned around and saw that the entity was now glaring at me. The smile was gone, replaced by a very disturbing grin. She was pointing at me, her head tilted at a perfect 90-degree angle. But that wasn't what disturbed me most. It was her eyes. They were no longer the comforting grin I loved. They were pitch black, like those demons in the movies. I stared at her, completely frozen. Honey, is everything okay? Did you drop something? My wife asked on the phone. I whispered back, "I, I didn't." She did. At that point, my wife screamed into the phone, "Hang up and look away." I don't know how I found the strength, but I did exactly what she said. When I opened my eyes a split second later, she was gone. Confused and terrified, I called my wife back. She said she was already on her way home. It shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have overlap. They said it wouldn't. They said she was harmless. I'm too scared to just sit around and wait. I keep looking over my shoulder. My wife should be home anytime now. As soon as she gets back, I'd ask her who she meant by they and what the hell is going on. She knows something, and I have to know what it is. Never did I think that the one I hold so near and dear to my heart, the one who protects me, would become the monster I fear the most. When my wife, Natalie, finally got back, she came in crying and wouldn't stop. She kept saying, You don't deserve this. We don't deserve this. You weren't supposed to overlap. I love you. I care about you. Your family shouldn't have overlap. At this point, I was really confused. I comforted her and held her until she stopped crying. Then, when she finally settled, I asked, Love, you're not making any sense. Who is she? Are you referring to the entity? She told me she doesn't have a name for it and has never actually seen her. Only others around her sometimes can. But she has always been described as someone who looks just like her, the same radiant smile and the same lovely green eyes. But when you screamed on the phone earlier, you knew what I was seeing, didn't you? How? I asked. She looked at me and started crying again. I only kept it from you because I didn't want to freak you out, she said. It's alright. Just tell me everything, I replied, pulling her close. Then she told me the story of the last person who overlapped, meaning saw her and the entity at the same time. When Natalie was in high school, her family, namely her parents and two brothers, were used to seeing it, as I call it, for lack of a better word, around the house. She was always described as a smiling girl who would usually just be sipping on water. This occurrence only seemed to happen in their house, never at school or outside. Her parents, knowing the situation, would never allow her to bring friends over. fearing they might freak out at what they saw. But one day, upon her insistence, and after arguing that seeing it had never done anyone harm, her parents finally let her bring a friend over. Natalie and her friend Chris were working on some homework when Natalie decided to go down to the kitchen and grab some snacks. As she was coming back out, she heard Chris say, "Very funny, but you're weirding me out with that smile." Natalie stopped dead in her tracks, but it was too late. The door to her room was open, and she was in Chris' direct line of sight from the hallway. He turned to look at her, his face completely pale, as Natalie heard glass shattering. She froze in shock. Chris was looking at them simultaneously, staring wide-eyed into the corner of the room. She heard him say, "What in the—" Natalie ran toward her room, but the door suddenly slammed shut. She started banging on it. "Chris, don't look at her. Just don't!" she screamed through the door. But silence. The door opened 5 minutes later, and she found him unconscious. After taking him to the hospital, they found that Chris had gone blind. The doctors couldn't explain it, and when they asked Chris to describe the last thing he saw, he struggled for words. That green, those eyes, black eyes, and her head, oh God, her head was tilted 90 degrees. I never thought such a beautiful face could be so twisted. She thinks the only reason I can still see is because the overlap happened over the phone, so I wasn't able to feel the full effect, whatever that means. I was surprised that another overlap like this hadn't occurred throughout her life. It's when Natalie told me that they said she was harmless and would not actively try to overlap. So I asked her about the they she mentioned. Well, when I was a kid, my great-grandparents knew something about this. They were very hush-hush about it, but apparently it had happened in the family once before. It was clear then. We needed to see her great-grandmother was the only one left that could provide us with any answers. Natalie called her mom and was told that they hadn't been in contact with her grandmother for the past 2 years. Ever since her husband died, she'd become depressed, asked not to be contacted, and broke off all ties. She lived out in the country by herself, secluded from the rest of the world. It was going to be a 3-hour drive, so we decided to try to get some rest before heading out the next day. We barely got a few hours of sleep. My wife woke me up this morning, telling me, "Breakfast ready," as she walked downstairs. I noticed we must have both missed our alarms, since it was already 11 o'clock a.m. The first thing I checked when I woke up was the bed to make sure I wasn't seeing it. When I finally went downstairs, I nearly fell backward when I saw my wife sipping a glass of orange juice facing the kitchen entrance. Jeez, don't do that, I snapped. She came rushing toward me. Sorry, she mumbled. I walked over and gave her a hug. It's alright, we're both on edge. We'll work through this. After a breakfast that neither of us had the appetite for, we hit the road to find some answers. As we drove, my wife held my hand, and I felt safe again. It was a strange sense of security because, even after everything, it was bright and sunny outside, and I was peacefully driving away with my wife. She smiled at me. I smiled back, looking at her beautiful green eyes while fighting internally to get the image of the twisted entity out of my mind. We remained quiet for most of the drive until we finally reached the house. It was located deep off a small highway down a narrow dirt road. There was an old van parked nearby, but it didn't look like it had been driven for weeks. The house also looked like it had been abandoned for a while. My wife reached out, and I held her hand. Let's hope for the best and see what we find, I said. But before I could open the door, my cell phone rang. The moment the first ring broke the quiet air, my wife clutched my hand tighter. She was on edge, I could tell. I looked over at her, and she was smiling ever so slightly. I pulled out my phone and looked at the caller ID. It read, Natalie. The grip of the hand I was holding started getting tighter and tighter. I suddenly get the feeling I was not with my wife at all. Call it a gut instinct. I picked up the phone as I realized the person in my peripheral vision was changing their expression. The breathing got heavier, and I heard the neck start to turn. With what little bravery I had left, I turned away, not daring to see the twisted face. It's not me! Natalie screamed through the phone. The instant her voice hit my ear, I heard a glass shattering sound and felt a burning pain on my hand that lasted a split second. I recoiled in pain. I know. I think it's gone now, I said. I looked over, and sure enough, she wasn't there anymore. Don't hang up, I breathed. Drive over here. We need to see this thing through. On her drive over, she explained that when she woke up, she was stuffed under the bed, as if someone had knocked her out and slid her there. When she realized I wasn't in the house, she knew something was wrong and called immediately. At this point, I was freaking out badly. So many questions rushed to my mind. It talked. It acted just like my wife. How was it holding my hand? How in the world did it get out of the house? And most importantly, how do I tell it apart from my wife? That's when I remembered the stinging pain and look at my hand. There was a very clear word burned into my skin. Lucky. While I waited for my wife to arrive, I started thinking. The entity said, "Breakfast ready," and "sorry." And why in the world was it sipping orange juice? Is it evolving? Is it learning how to fool me? I wondered for a long time what all this meant until my wife finally arrived at 5 o'clock p.m. It was getting dark and I wanted to find a motel and come back tomorrow. But my wife insisted we at least check if someone lived in the abandoned house. Before she got out of the car, she took the cigarette lighter from the dash and burned her hand. I got upset, but she said it might help me tell them apart. At this point, any idea that helped rationalize the fear sounded good. We went and knocked on the door since the doorbell seemed broken. "Did you hear that?" my wife asked, terrified. "Hear what?" I replied. "The scream. It's like someone's in pain." My instinct was to back out. I really wish I had. But before I could do anything, my wife opened the door and led me inside. I held her hand, keeping one foot in the doorway. I was all too familiar with the classic door slams behind you in a creepy house scenario to walk in completely. Inside, everything was dusty and covered in webs. It was also unnervingly dark. As my eyes adjusted, I noticed the house was completely trash, with the strange symbols scratched into the walls and broken furniture in a shade of red. Just then, my wife started feeling lightheaded and began to fall. "I feel so dizzy," she mumbled. I immediately caught her as she passed out. Then, to my horror, as I looked up, I saw her in the hallway. I could barely make out her figure, but her finger was pointed at me, and her head was tilted at an unnatural angle. I didn't need to stand there and see the rest of her creepy figure. I immediately turned around, dragging my wife with me. The door behind us slammed shut, but luckily my foot was in the way. I groaned in pain from the impact and lunged toward the barely open door, crashing outside with my wife. I looked back, hoping she was gone, but she was still walking toward us, very slowly and deliberately. The next moments were hazy. I was full of adrenaline. Somehow, I managed to throw my wife into the car and jump in after her. As I looked in the rear view mirror, I saw her, mouth wide open, as she screamed. As I hit the accelerator, I heard what sounded like the house's windows shattering. I drove half an hour to a small motel and rented a room for the night. My wife is asleep now, and I haven't slept at all. I dare not look away from her. And what does the message on my hand mean? Is it toying with me, telling me I'm lucky my wife called to save me? Should I go back to that house with someone else? When my wife woke up, We had a long discussion about what our next step should be. While we were talking, I casually glanced at her wrist and noticed the burn mark was still there. She saw me looking, and her usually radiant green eyes became dull. It is me. I wish I could tell you not to be afraid of me, but I don't trust myself anymore. Tears started running down her face as I hugged and comforted her without responding. She was right. I was starting to doubt the one person I trusted to protect me in any situation. Still, I took some solace in the fact that she had saved me twice from the twisted entity. Despite our doubts, we came up with a few theories that seemed to make sense in light of recent events. First, it seemed the entity was unable to appear in my wife's presence, proven by the fact that the moment she passed out, I was able to see it. Second, the entity was either evolving, since it could now speak and move outside the house, or there might be multiple entities. Third, technology could potentially be a weakness for this thing, as phone calls had saved me twice. Finally, there was something very wrong with that house. The entity definitely didn't want us there. The house had to be explored, but it was too dangerous to go back without more knowledge. So, we decided to talk to the only other person in Natalie's life who had experienced the overlap, her high school friend, Chris. After making some phone calls, we found out that Chris lived in a nearby town and had become a support group speaker for the visually impaired. It turned out he was speaking at 11 o'clock a.m., and we still had enough time to make it. We arrived at the small community hall just as they closed the doors. Most of Chris' speech was uplifting and full of emotion, recounting all that he had achieved in life. He ended with, "The day I lost my vision was the day I truly stopped living in fear." We stuck around afterward, and when the hall had emptied, approached Chris, who was standing next to his wife, whom he had introduced earlier during his speech. I didn't even know how to begin asking about his vision loss, but before I could say anything, he pointed at me and said, "Ah, so the overlap happened. She said you would come." He went on to tell us that ever since the incident, Natalie's great-grandmother had been in close touch with him. She felt very guilty about what happened and was determined to learn as much as she could. She also insisted it was only a matter of time before the overlap happened again around Natalie, and she wanted to find a way to stop it. When we told Chris about the condition of the house and the symbols I had seen, he became very serious. Then she tried to do it. She tried to bind what holds the sisters together to her house. I'm afraid she may not have survived that, he said quietly. I was really confused at this point. Did you just say sisters? I asked. Chris told us to follow him home. There was a lot we needed to discuss. While Chris' wife cooked lunch, he told us about the day he lost his vision. "I never told this to anyone except your great-grandmother," he began. "But the day I lost my vision, before I passed out, I'm pretty certain I saw a second entity behind the one I was staring at in disbelief. And as I drifted into unconsciousness, I heard a whisper, 'Feed.'" He explained that Natalie's great-grandmother had called the entities the sisters, since she was certain there was more than one. She believed they fed on fear, not just ordinary fear, but the greater the fear, the stronger they became. It made sense, considering I'd lived much of my life in fear, and now, the one person I saw as my protector had become the subject of my fear. After years of research into ancient lore, demonology, mythology, and family history, Natalie's great-grandmother had found a way to pin the sisters. That must be why there were strange symbols in the house, and why the entities didn't want us near it. She must have bound them there. However, since the entities still appeared and even rode with me in the car, that meant they were still able to move freely, though perhaps they had a vulnerability within that house. All of this was progress, yet the thought of not knowing how to deal with the sisters was deeply troubling. "Lunch is ready," called Chris's wife as we made our way to the kitchen to enjoy a much-needed meal. Chris wanted to end this as much as we did, so he insisted we spend the night for safety. Considering I hadn't slept much lately, I welcomed the idea. We all stayed in the living room, and Chris's wife and I took shifts staying awake to make sure nothing happened. I woke up at 3 o'clock a.m., feeling thirsty again. I laughed to myself, thinking maybe I had a medical condition that made me wake up thirsty in the middle of the night. I looked over at Chris's wife. It was her shift, and she was awake, watching me with a gentle smile. I whispered, "Water?" She pointed to the kitchen. I walked over, half expecting to see the entity again. Thankfully, the kitchen was empty. I checked the fridge. No cold water. I figured there might be bottled water in the pantry. When I opened it, I saw that it was spacious and dark. I turned on the light and froze. In the corner lay Chris's wife, tied up, seemingly unconscious. Then it all hit me. "Lunch is ready." Those were the only words spoken by Chris's wife that day. I was so caught up in figuring out what was chasing us that I'd missed it completely. I rushed back to the living room to find my wife missing and Chris sound asleep. What happened next is beyond bizarre. I woke Chris and called the cops immediately. I knew they must have taken her to the house. I didn't have time to wait. I rushed out the door and headed there. Yes, I know it was stupid, but we do stupid things when our loved ones are in danger. That's human nature. During the drive, questions tore through my mind. How did I miss that? Why is the entity evolving so fast? Did it take another form? Was I not supposed to survive an overlap, much less twice? Is it hunting me down? And why take my wife when I'm the one it wants? I finally reached the house. It was 6 o'clock a.m. Before I could step out of the car, my phone rang. It was Natalie. Hello? Honey, are you okay? Where are you? I shouted as I picked up. I'm so confused. I thought we slept at Chris's house. I'm home. Please, just come back. Now, I was really confused. Was that really my wife on the phone? Honey, your wrist. Before I could finish, she replied. Yes, there's a burn mark on my wrist. So, I decided to drive back. As I started reversing, I saw it, standing in the window of that decrepit house, sipping water from a glass, smiling at me, with eyes shining greener than ever. I drove home, frustrated and unable to make sense of what was happening. On the way, I realized it knew I would come to the house looking for my wife. It wanted me to see. But why? When I got home, Natalie came running and hugged me. I felt cold-hearted doing it, but I immediately grabbed her wrist. The burn mark was there. She looked up at me in disappointment. It is me. As I finally looked into her eyes, my heart stopped. They were no longer the beautiful green I'd come to love. They were a deep, endless black. Natalie has been crying a lot ever since she looked in the mirror, and I'm still trying to process everything. It's been a full day since her eyes changed color, and there have been no more sightings of the entity. Life seems normal again. Not perfect, but normal. Natalie is still herself, though far more serious now. I spoke with Chris on the phone. He and his wife are okay and haven't seen the entity since. At this point, I'm not sure whether I should go back to the house and investigate. I can't shake the feeling that it wanted me to see its eyes that day, that it wanted me to know what it took from me. I don't even know if destroying the sisters would bring back Natalie's beautiful green eyes. With that said, I'm keeping a close eye on her. Just when I thought maybe I had found peace, just maybe I could move on with everything, things got weirder. Natalie's eyes remained black. After a couple of weeks of pretending things were okay, I tried talking to her about the whole situation, but she would always find a way to skirt around the conversation. Things have never really been the same. We eat dinner in silence. I wake up at night and find her staring at the ceiling. But enough was enough. I couldn't continue living like this. I needed to find a way to fix things. The only way I knew how was to go back to that disturbing house. I sat down with Natalie, and we had a long conversation about everything that had happened. She reluctantly agreed that we needed to go back. Whatever these sisters were, we needed to confront them. Before we headed to the house, we came up with a plan. Mirrors might help, so I made sure to bring one with me. I mean, at this point, why not? Knowing how dark it was inside the house last time, I also bought some night vision goggles. Now came to the question of whether Natalie would accompany me or not. Considering she's been my savior every time, we decided it was best that she came with me. However, I wasn't going to let her enter the house under any circumstances. I also made sure it was really her. Even though Natalie has been significantly quieter than before, I make it a point to ask her numerous questions and expect real answers to be sure it's her. I can see the sadness in her eyes. She knows I've lost the complete trust I once had in her. But she complies, answering my questions patiently, knowing it's the only way I can keep a straight head through all of this. We arrive at the house at 11 a.m. in broad daylight. Not that it made a difference, since the house was as dark as ever inside. Since it was a pretty remote area, I didn't feel bad hooking up a chain to the front door and pulling it off with my truck. I wasn't letting any door close on me this time. I had Natalie stand about 10 feet away from the doorway so she could still see me as I walked in. My theory was that these sisters seem unable to face her, so as long as I maintain a good line of sight with Natalie, I half-heartedly hoped they wouldn't appear. With my night vision goggles activated, I stepped into the house. Natalie called nervously from behind. "Be careful, honey." Even though so much had happened, I still found comfort in her voice. "It'll be all right. I promise. We'll fix this," I called back. The air inside was heavy, and I found it slightly hard to breathe, but I had planned this trip for days and wasn't about to back out. I saw the symbols again on the walls and pulled out my phone to take some pictures. Everything in the house was trash and dusty, except for a small cupboard on the far wall of the living room. So far, I'd been walking in a straight line, maintaining sight with Natalie. But this cupboard seemed odd. It had too many symbols around it, and it was the only thing in the house that looked untouched. There had been no sign of the sisters. "I'm going to check out something out really quickly. I'll be right back, okay?" I called out. Natalie shook her head. "Oh, okay. Please just hurry. I want to leave already." I sprinted across the room and looked through the drawers. All were empty except the last one, which contained a small, packet-sized leather-bound diary. I immediately slipped it into my pocket and started to head back. Just then, I turned around to find the smiling face of my wife, holding a glass of water, her eyes greener than ever. For a moment, I admired her beautiful green eyes, then snapped out of it. This wasn't Natalie. I slowly began to walk past it in an arc. "Is everything okay in there?" Natalie yelled from outside. The moment her voice reached me, I heard glass shatter behind me. I knew what was happening. In that adrenaline-filled moment, I said, "Screw it, I'm going to give." Just when I thought maybe I had found peace, just maybe I could move on with everything, things got weirder. Natalie's eyes remained black. After a couple of weeks of pretending things were okay, I tried talking to her about the whole situation, but she would always find a way to skirt around the conversation. Things have never really been the same. We eat dinner in silence. I wake up at night and find her staring at the ceiling. But enough was enough. I couldn't continue living like this. I needed to find a way to fix things. And the only way I knew how was to go back to that disturbing house. I sat down with Natalie, and we had a long conversation about everything that had happened. She reluctantly agreed that we needed to go back. Whatever these sisters were, we needed to confront them. Before we headed to the house, we came up with a plan. Mirrors might help, so I made sure to bring one with me. I mean, at this point, why not? Knowing how dark it was inside the house last time, I also bought some night vision goggles. Now came to the question of whether Natalie would accompany me or not. Considering she's been my savior every time, we decided it was best that she came with me. However, I wasn't going to let her enter the house under any circumstances. I also made sure it was really her. Even though Natalie has been significantly quieter than before, I make it a point to ask her numerous questions and expect real answers to be sure it's her. I can see the sadness in her eyes. She knows I've lost the complete trust I once had in her. But she complies, answering my questions patiently, knowing it's the only way I can keep a straight head through all of this. We arrive at the house at 11 a.m. in broad daylight. Not that it made a difference, since the house was as dark as ever inside. Since it was a pretty remote area, I didn't feel bad hooking up a chain to the front door and pulling it off with my truck. I wasn't letting any door close on me this time. I had Natalie stand about 10 feet away from the doorway so she could still see me as I walked in. My theory was that these sisters seem unable to face her, so as long as I maintained a good line of sight with Natalie, I half-heartedly hoped they wouldn't appear. With my night vision goggles activated, I stepped into the house. Natalie called nervously from behind. "Be careful, honey." Even though so much had happened, I still found comfort in her voice. "It'll be all right. I promise. We'll fix this," I called back. The air inside was heavy, and I found it slightly hard to breathe, but I had planned this trip for days and wasn't about to back out. I saw the symbols again on the walls and pulled out my phone to take some pictures. Everything in the house was trash and dusty, except for a small cupboard on the far wall of the living room. So far, I'd been walking in a straight line, maintaining sight with Natalie. But this cupboard seemed odd. It had too many symbols around it, and it was the only thing in the house that looked untouched. There had been no sign of the sisters. "I'm going to check out something out really quickly. I'll be right back, okay?" I called out. Natalie shook her head. "Oh, okay. Please just hurry. I want to leave already." I sprinted across the room and looked through the drawers. All were empty except the last one, which contained a small, packet-sized leather-bound diary. I immediately slipped it into my pocket and started to head back. Just then, I turned around to find the smiling face of my wife, holding a glass of water, her eyes greener than ever. For a moment, I admired her beautiful green eyes, then snapped out of it. This wasn't Natalie. I slowly began to walk past it in an arc. "Is everything okay in there?" Natalie yelled from outside. The moment her voice reached me, I heard glass shatter behind me. I knew what was happening. In that adrenaline-filled moment, I said, "Screw it. I'm going to give this a shot." I pulled out the mirror, turned around, and held it up to its face. Through my night vision goggles, I saw it, head tilted, grinning. It let out a scream and shattered the mirror in my hand. I slowly backed toward Natalie's line of sight, eyes squeezed shut. Just when I thought I was almost there, I bumped into someone. A hand gripped my shoulder. A face leaned close to mine. "You came back to us," it whispered in my ear. The most disturbing part wasn't that my eyes were closed. It was that it sounded like 5 voices speaking in unison, some deep, some high pitch. Then I felt another hand, and suddenly I was thrown to the ground with a force I couldn't comprehend. As I fell, I crawled toward the light coming from the door. I barely get far enough to see Natalie screaming outside, running toward the house. "Stop! Natalie, stop! Don't come in!" I yelled as she halted a few feet from the door. "No, no, no! Not you two! They can't have you two! They said they wouldn't!" At that time, I didn't pay attention to what she said. I felt a hand grab my foot, trying to drag me back into the dark. My phone had fallen out. Dizzy, I reached out for it and managed to unlock it. Natalie's face lit up as my background, her beautiful green eyes, radiant as ever. I gave her one last look before passing out. Just before I lost consciousness, the hand on my foot released. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. As my blurry vision cleared, Natalie threw her arms around me. "Oh, thank God you're okay. Can you see? Look at me. Can you see?" As she pulled back, the first thing I noticed were her green eyes. They were just as radiant as they used to be. "Your eyes," I mumbled. Natalie screamed with joy. "Yes! Yes, honey, my eyes are okay. I feel like myself again. Everything's okay." I had a million questions, but a doctor insisted I rest. The next morning, while the doors, "I'm going to give this a shot." I pulled out the mirror, turned around, and held it up to its face. Through my night vision goggles, I saw it, head tilted, grinning. It let out a scream and shattered the mirror in my hand. I slowly backed toward Natalie's line of sight,
eyes squeezed shut. Just when I thought I was almost there, I bumped into someone. A hand gripped my shoulder. A face leaned close to mine. "You came back to us," it whispered in my ear. The most disturbing part wasn't that my eyes were closed. It was that it sounded like 5 voices speaking in unison, some deep, some high pitch. Then I felt another hand, and suddenly I was thrown to the ground with a force I couldn't comprehend. As I fell, I crawled toward the light coming from the door. I barely get far enough to see Natalie screaming outside, running toward the house. "Stop! Natalie, stop! Don't come in!" I yelled as she halted a few feet from the door. "No, oh no! Not you two! They can't have you two! They said they wouldn't!" At that time, I didn't pay attention to what she said. I felt a hand grab my foot, trying to drag me back into the dark. My phone had fallen out. Dizzy, I reached out for it and managed to unlock it. Natalie's face lit up as my background, her beautiful green eyes radiant as ever. I gave her one last look before passing out. Just before I lost consciousness, the hand on my foot released. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. As my blurry vision cleared, Natalie threw her arms around me. "Oh, thank God you're okay. Can you see? Look at me. Can you see?" As she pulled back, the first thing I noticed were her green eyes. They were just as radiant as they used to be. "Your eyes," I mumbled. Natalie screamed with joy. "Yes! Yes, honey, my eyes are okay. I feel like myself again. Everything's okay." I had a million questions, but a doctor insisted I rest. The next morning, while the doctors finished my discharge paperwork, I spoke to Natalie about what happened at the house. She explained that as I was losing consciousness, she ran inside and saw the sisters staring at my phone. The moment they looked up at her, they disappeared. She said that as she pulled me out, the house began crumbling and collapsed completely. Really? I thought. Was it that simple? Then I remembered the pictures I had taken. I reached for my phone to check them. "What are you looking for, love?" Natalie asked, noticing me scrolling through my gallery. "I took some pictures in the house, but they're gone." I don't remember you taking any pictures." She grabbed my phone and slid it into her purse. "But we'll worry about that later. I'm just so glad you're okay." She hugged me tightly. She was acting a little strange. Did she delete the photos? I noticed my jacket hanging on the door, the one I wore in the house. I walked over and put it on. "It's chilly in here," I smiled at her. The doctor called her over to sign some papers, and as she turned away, I felt my inside pocket. The small leather diary was still there. Ever since we've been home, Natalie has been constantly by my side, literally.
The only time I'm alone is when I go to the bathroom. I pulled out the diary and opened it to the first page. Herein lies what little knowledge we have gained over generations since the birth of the sisters. I was about to turn the page when Natalie started banging on the door. Are you okay in there? Yes, I'm fine, honey. Be out in a bit, I called back. Something's not right. She won't leave me alone for even a minute, not to mention what she said before I pass out. She knows something, and she won't tell me. But I don't want to confront her yet. I went to work today and tried to read the diary whenever I get the chance. But it was a busy day. The story is long, but I'm getting close to finishing it. Earlier today, I left work a couple of hours early and drove to the supposedly demolished house. What I saw disturbed me. The house was burnt to the ground, as if someone had deliberately set it on fire. Why would Natalie lie to me? Did she do this herself? I'm starting to doubt a lot of what she's been saying lately. Natalie keeps calling for me to come to bed, but I'm in my style writing this story. I keep lying, saying I'm working on something for my job. I also told her I have to go in tomorrow morning for a few hours to make up for the time I missed while in the hospital. She bought it. I'll actually be going to a coffee shop instead to finish reading the diary. So I'll pick up where I left off. I went to bed, ready to go to the local Starbucks the next morning to finish reading the diary. Surprisingly, I actually fell asleep, all while Natalie held my hand and told me everything was alright. I woke up at 3 a.m. again, feeling thirsty. By now, I've realized that this isn't really normal. But then again, nothing has really been normal. I decided to go down to the kitchen and get a drink of water anyway. As I tried to slip my hand out of Natalie's, she instantly woke up. What's wrong, honey? She inquired. Her eyes were not sleepy. It was as if she hadn't really been asleep at all. Oh, nothing, love. I just need to get a drink of water, I replied. Before I even get out of bed, she was already up and ready to go down with me. She held my hand and walked me to the kitchen as I poured myself a glass of water. She was being overprotective, too protective. Mind you, there wasn't anything really wrong with her. She was herself. But I couldn't help feeling that she was making sure I never saw the entity again. Every chance she got, she tried to be around me. We went back to bed, and I fell asleep knowing that Natalie was probably not going to sleep at all. In the morning, she asked me several questions about why I was going to work. I made up some decent excuses. Sweetheart, I'll be fine. I thought you said it was over. They're gone, I told her. Yes, of course. I just wanted to make sure. I just wanted to spend as much time with you as I can after all that's happened, she said, with an almost sad look on her face. I arrived at Starbucks, ordered some coffee, and without further delay, pulled out the diary and began reading. Before I tell you about the contents of the diary, I want to make some observations regarding it. It was very old, leather bound, and almost falling apart. It had several different types of handwriting throughout, suggesting that it had been passed down and that multiple people had taken notes in it. The notes within the diary were scattered, and I have tried my best to piece everything together.
The diary began by telling the story of two sisters who were born a year apart. The first was Madeline, born on March 11, 1800s, a beautiful girl with bright green eyes. The second daughter was born on March 11, 1801. This seemed a little odd to the parents, but they didn't give it much thought, since their second daughter also had green eyes like her older sister. They named her Caroline. As they grew older, the parents realized that both Madeline and Caroline were identical, not just as twins, but exactly the same. Later, they discovered that both girls were born at exactly 3 a.m. Initially, they saw several doctors, but none could explain the strange phenomenon. All they could conclude was that it was an anomaly. Eventually, the family accepted it and continued with their lives. Of the two sisters, Caroline, the younger one, was lively and energetic. She had a way with words, and the townspeople were very fond of her. Madeline, the older sister, was quite natured. She didn't speak much and, over the years, grew to envy her sister. Caroline would sometimes pretend to be Madeline just to confuse people. For the most part, though, the sisters were like any other siblings, with the usual conflicts every now and then. Now, this next part of their story takes a dark turn. Both Madeline and Caroline fall in love with the same man. Thomas was a wealthy businessman, and they got to know him through their father. Caroline admired Thomas' wealth more than anything, whereas Madeline truly loved him. Thomas chose to marry Caroline, not knowing her affection wasn't real. Being the quiet one, Madeline didn't say anything. On their wedding day, when Madeline saw Caroline getting ready, she couldn't contain her anger and frustration. In a heated argument, she accidentally pushed Caroline down the stairs, killing her. What happened next was even more bizarre. In a state of shock and emotional distress, Madeline hid her sister's body in a closet, put on Caroline's wedding dress, and proceeded with the ceremony. Madeline married the love of her life and tried to move on as if nothing had happened. A few days later, Caroline's body was discovered. The parents knew it was Caroline because they had secretly marked both daughters with distinct burn marks on their backs. Once word got out, Thomas left Madeline in utter disgust. Realizing her life was ruined, Madeline hung herself. Now I realize that Caroline was always the one who smiled, the one who talked, and the one who could imitate people. Madeline, on the other hand, is the twisted form of the entity. At this point, I ask myself, so that's it? They're ghost hunting the family? Well, not quite. The diary continued. A generation later, the family was blessed with another beautiful baby girl named Laura. As Laura grew up, the family couldn't help but notice that she looked exactly like Madeline and Caroline. Slowly, they started seeing the entity, and strange things began to happen. The writer of the diary claimed they didn't completely understand the origin of the overlap, but they believed it occurred when the child experienced immense emotion. I won't give you every detail from the diary, as the notes were extensive. It gave several accounts of different daughters,
born into the family who followed the same pattern. They looked like Madeline and Caroline, and strange things surrounded them. Over time, the diary writer's understanding of the entity deepened. Every case ended with the sisters taking complete possession of the daughter or anomaly child and disappearing. Over the years, the family discovered that the original burn marks used by the parents could shield items from the sisters, but not people. The notes went back and forth on what exactly the sisters were until I reached the last few pages, written by Natalie's great grandmother, or so I guess. It turned out she was a neurologist. She theorized that the sisters were part of the anomaly child, that they resided within her mind. That's why no one could ever end the cycle. Part of Natalie was the two sisters. Natalie's great grandmother wrote that Natalie was not to blame. The sisters communicated with her subconsciously. She knew they existed, but wasn't fully aware of what was happening around her. To my horror, I turned to the next page, hoping for a solution. The final words read, "It's her. They are a part of her." In every past case, the final stage was complete control of the anomaly child's body by the entity, after which the immediate people around the anomaly child would die and the anomaly child would disappear. The sisters are entities that feed off immense emotion. Unfortunately, killing the anomaly child does not end the cycle. They will be coming for me next, as they have seen the diary in my possession. I'm hiding this diary under the prescribed markings. To whoever finds this next, I am sorry. I wrote that last paragraph without describing how shocked I was. Was this it? There was no solution? Is it why Natalie has been staying so close to me? Does she realize she'll eventually be lost to the sisters? How did she save me that day at the house? Did she actually interact with the entity? I closed the diary, my heart racing. I cannot lose Natalie. She is my world, my everything. As I look up, I realize it was almost dark. I had spent nearly the entire day reading. As I drove home, I didn't know what to do. I decided I needed to confront Natalie and tell her about the diary, even though it probably wasn't the best idea. But what choice did I have? When I got home, Natalie rushed into my arms. I apologized for being so late. We had dinner together, and afterward, she asked if we could look at the stars for a little while. Considering all the strange things that had happened lately, I gladly agreed to finally do something normal with her. Remember how we used to climb onto the roof of the engineering building on campus and stare at the stars? She asked, turning toward me. Yeah, and I still stand by what I said then. I don't need to look at the stars when I can look into your beautiful eyes, I responded. I love you so much. Always know that, she said, and started crying. I held her, unable to shake the feeling that she knew exactly what was happening. That night, I went to bed fully intending to confront her the next morning. I woke up at 2:45 a.m. to Natalie quietly kissing my forehead. I pretended to stay asleep as I heard her walk downstairs. I quietly got up and followed her. She was holding a suitcase and walking toward the front door. "Natalie, honey, what's going on?" I called out. She turned, eyes full of tears. "I have to go. I'm so sorry. Please. I have to go." I wasn't letting her leave. I had gone through too much for her sake. "Natalie, I know everything." I began, but she kept glancing at the clock. "No, you don't. I asked them to. I told them to take me, but leave you alone," she screamed. Now I was really worried. "Natalie, what did you do? How did you get me out of that house? Natalie, I need you to be honest with me. For once. Honey, trust me." She collapsed to the floor. I begged them. I begged them to leave you alone and take me. I've been fighting them for so long. Half the time, I don't even know who's in control. They agreed. They leave you alone only if you stop fighting them. But it's too late now. I'm no longer fighting them. I've given them control of my body. Run! 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 As she said her last words, I noticed strange inflections in her voice. "Run!" she screamed, looking up. Her eyes were pitch black, her head tilting unnaturally, a grin slowly forming on her face. The clock behind her read 3 a.m. What followed was probably the craziest thing I've ever done. But in hindsight, these past few months had made me braver than ever before. As she stood up, I rushed toward her and hugged her tightly. "I know you're in there, love. And you've been protecting me all this time. You've always been my savior. Now it's my turn to save you, to protect you. Come back to me, Natalie. Come back to me. You're stronger than they are. Fight back. Fight back for me. Fight back for us. I love you. I can't live without you." I held her, eyes shut tight. "Remember the stars. Remember how we stared at them last night. Remember how we stared at them all those years ago. I still think your eyes shine brighter than any of the stars in the sky." In that adrenaline-filled moment, we kept talking about our most cherished memories until I felt tears falling into my shoulder. I finally dared to look up, and she had returned. My Natalie. Her eyes shone bright green, full of tears. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, and I held her for a long time. After everything that has happened, I've realized how afraid I was of the road. I always feared monsters in my imagination, and the only person I saw as my shelter was Natalie. Little did I know she was fighting something far scarier. She needs me more than ever, and I finally see that. I have to fight for the one I love so deeply. I believe that when Natalie gave the sisters control over her body, they became vulnerable. Somehow, they seem trapped inside her. Life isn't going to be normal anymore. But I don't care. As long as I have Natalie, everything will be alright. It's been a week since then, and the things are starting to normalize. Still, sometimes at night, I wake up, and when I turn to look at Natalie, I see those pitch black eyes. But I hold her hand, and in the blink of an eye, her green eyes return, brighter than ever.